Hey everyone, it's Tango Oscar Mike, and this is the video I think a few people have been waiting for, and I'm going to talk about the battery backup system that I put into the house. Um, the first thing, it's kind of hard to see. The batteries are here, the inverter is behind our water softener here, 200 amp transfer panel, and the panel's coming into the house, but I'll get into that. Why did we put this system in? Well, we live out in the country and we currently have a gas generator, or we still have it. We have a gas generator. It's a Honda 6500. And we use that. We bought that, I think 12 years ago, and it's still been running great. We don't have any issues with it. It was feeding this panel here. This is a manual transfer switch, and there's 10 circuits on it. The first two, the first four are just for the hot water tank and the water pump. We have a well with an electric water pump. The other 6 circuits went to a few other things in the house. But even when we lost power, we had to wheel the generator outside, plug it in, start it up, come down, flick all the switches, and get power back to the house, and still run a few extension cords to run a few things we had in the house where there just weren't enough circuits to get to those areas. So the generator's heavy. My wife has trouble moving it, and normally when you lose power, it's because of a storm. And let me tell you, it sucks to get up in the middle of the night or the middle of the day in a pouring rainstorm to hook up a generator so you can flush the toilets. So that's one of the reasons we did this. Now, we were looking for a whole house propane generator. That was our first step. We contacted a couple of companies. My next door neighbor had one put in, so I contacted the Generac rep that did hers, and he kept telling me he was going to come out. And he kept missing appointments, not calling. And then I called him a few times after that, and he never called me back. I tried. I called another electrical company, and they deal with a different generator. They badmouthed Generac as soon as they came out here. But even they said they didn't have any generators. They were on back order. And he was trying to upsell me really like this massive generator. And we just decided that wasn't a person we wanted to deal with. I contacted Generac directly. They put me in contact with their largest dealer in the area, who happens to be about 65 miles away. Called them. The first call, they told me they were very busy and that they could come out probably in a couple of months to look at it and give us a quote on the generator. And a couple months went by, didn't hear from them. Called them back. They had no recollection of her talking to me. I talked to them about generator. They said that they were too busy. They couldn't come out, and that all generators were back ordered for over a year. I said, well, can we at least get on a list, or can somebody come out so we can see what we need, get it ordered, and get on a list to have it installed, a generator installed the following year. And that never happened. We tried a few times. They kept canceling, and then they kept telling us that they just didn't have time. I tried calling Generac again, and basically they said they didn't know what else to do. So I watch a lot of Will Prowse videos. Will Prowse on YouTube reviews batteries, solar panels, inverters, all-in-one units, which is what we got. And he does a great job. And without his videos, I don't think I would have had the courage to do this myself. So that's the why. So when we couldn't get a whole house generator, and we still had our gas generator, and if I'm not home, my wife really would struggle with getting the generator hooked up. And again, and another reason is, if we're not home and we have the gas generator, say we go on a little weekend road trip or something, we lose power, I could come home to all of our freezers being defrosted and losing all the meat and produce we have. So That's another reason why we wanted a whole house generator. If you're familiar with whole house generators, usually the power's off for about a minute, 60 seconds, and then the generator kicks on and brings power back to your house. So this is what we got. I have 4 EG4 LL batteries and a Grow Watt 12 kilowatt inverter. I got these all from Signature Solar. I talked to them about what I wanted to do. I called them and explained what I was looking to do. They were very helpful. I actually called Grow Watt directly too, since I am a ham radio operator. I asked them about RF noise from the unit. But that's what we have. The Grow Watt EG-LL, which I believe stands for Lifetime Lithium. I believe they're guaranteed for 10 years, but they estimate a 20-year lifespan on them, and that's constantly cycling the batteries, which we probably won't be doing since this is really a backup system. Getting the components, the inverter came in pretty quick, and then I had to wait a couple of weeks for the batteries. They were back ordered. They told me that when I ordered them, and it wasn't a problem. Everything came in nice and packaged very well. No damage, no scratches, anything. The rack I also bought from Signature Solar. This came in a flat pack, and I had to build the rack. But let me tell you, this is probably one of the nicer computer racks I've built. I work in the network and engineering network field, and this is a pretty nice rack. I wanted an enclosed rack because I didn't want anybody touching the front of the batteries. You know, if I open up the back room, this is a storage room. I'm back here often. I have a reloading bench back here and some other stuff. And I didn't want to have this open and Augie come in and put his nose on it. The battery terminals have covers on them and everything else, but I didn't want that chance. I wanted it to be enclosed so nothing fell into it and shorted something out. The batteries came with all the jumpers to go from battery to battery. It also came with little network jumpers to go linked to each battery. So these batteries are all interconnected to the inverter. This part of it was extremely simple to set up and do. The rest of the wiring on the house took a lot more. So I'll go into that. When you want to do this type of work on your house, because well, let me explain my setup first. We have two 200 amp panels. We have a 400 amp service coming into the house. There's 2 service lines that come in from the meter and go to each panel. We wanted to split this. Doing a whole house generator or even the battery system, there's things in the house we do not want on battery backup. And the easiest way to prevent those from going on the battery backup or generator is to split these 2 panels and have one that's on backup and one that isn't. Some items on the one that isn't on battery backup, our oven, our washer, our dryer, our pool pump, our pool heater. We don't want all that. We don't want that stuff on battery backup or on generator because it will just run down your generator or run down the batteries very, very quickly. Keep in mind that even if you have a whole house generator, the more items in your house that you have on, the faster you're going to burn through fuel. So doing it this way really trim things down. So I just want one panel fed from outside. So I got this. This is a 200 amp transfer panel. There's really not much to this panel. Basically, it's a big switch inside the panel, and I'll give you a shot of that. But it's a big switch. So we had to replace the service line coming into the house. To pull the meter and do work in that box, you are required, at least here, to have the power disconnected at the pool by the power company. When you do that, they will not reconnect that service until the wiring is inspected by an inspector. So I had to coordinate between the power company and the inspector. The power company will come out at 8 o'clock in the morning, kill the power, we can start working, and then the inspector can come out and inspect it, and then the power company would turn the power back on, which was inspected. The latest the power company would come back out was 2 o'clock. to turn the power back on. So I had to coordinate that. Plus I had to coordinate with an electrician. Now I have a family member. My older brother's an electrician. My father's an electrician too, but he's retired. He moved to Florida. And unfortunately they went back. He drives a school bus for special needs kids, and they had to get back to Florida for the new school year to start. He wanted to help me, but the kids are really important to him, so they went back home. So my older brother came out and helped me, but I had to coordinate those three schedules to get this done. I did have some trouble contacting the power company and getting the right number at first, but once that got situated and they gave me a contact that I could talk to, I didn't have any problems. So the 200 amp, the components to do this, just the wiring that I needed new service line coming into the house. That is very hard to come by. There's a nationwide shortage. The inspector was shocked that I was actually able to get some, but I got that. It's normally $3 to $4 a foot, at least in the past, and it's over $9 a foot. And I ended up with over 20 feet of wire for that. I also had to get some 6-gauge 3-conductor wire, which was expensive. Just 15 feet of 10-2 wire from Home Depot was almost $50. So the 200 amp panel, that was something too. I had trouble finding what I needed. That was over $600. So everything adds up really fast, and you're going to see this. What we spent on this system was as much, maybe even a little more than what we would have spent on a whole house propane generator and propane tank. Actually, it's probably a little less now when I think about it, because we probably would have needed a pretty big propane generator if we wanted to do the whole house. So we did the wiring. My house was built, well, the service entrance, the power for my house was put in before my house was bricked. We built our house, so that was put in when the house was just a frame. The brick company came out and bricked the house and bricked the service lines coming into the house, cemented those into the brick. So we had to chisel away at the service connection to get the wire out. That took longer than we thought, but we got it done. We got the panels in. There were circuits in these panels because, like I said, I wanted to split it. There were some circuits in this panel that needed to move this one. For example, the dryer and washing machine was on this panel, and I needed those over here. I think all in all, there were like 10 circuits on each panel that needed moved. And the only way to do that was to pull those 10 circuits out of this one, label them, pull the 10 circuits out of that one, label them, move the wires, and luckily for almost all the circuits, I had plenty of wire left over. I did have to fight with a couple to get some extra wire to reach over to the other panel, but I got all those circuits moved. I did that on my own when my brother wasn't here. I grew up around doing this kind of stuff. I actually had some, in high school, I had a shop class where I learned house wiring, and my father being an electrician, every weekend pretty much, I think through my entire teenage years, was spent helping my dad rewire houses. That's what he did as a side job. We'd go out and rewire houses, have them inspected, putting in, replacing old B and C, not B and C, old Romex wire through, 2-conductor Romex wire through houses, and putting in, nice breaker panels and that kind of stuff. So I'm real familiar with the electrical wiring, and me and my father wired my house when we built it, and it's built out. The reason there's 2 panels here, we do have, our house is big, but in our kitchen, for example, I think there's 8 outlets in the kitchen. Each one of those is on its own circuit, so we don't pop breakers when we're, using a crock pot or something like that. My dad didn't want us to have any problems going down the road in case we, remodeled or did something bigger. And both of these panels are completely full. I think there's 1 circuit on each panel that isn't in use, but that's it. Even though they're 200 amp panels, we don't draw anywhere near that 200 amps on the panel for the battery system. So all the wiring got done, and now the system has been in place for a while. how I determined what size inverter I needed and how many batteries, that kind of stuff we wanted to start with. We went on the low end as far as batteries go. There's only 4 batteries. And that's because I wasn't sure if this was going to work the way we wanted it to. We can always add batteries. There's actually room for 2 more batteries in this box. And we could always add more racks of batteries. If you watch Will Prowl's videos, he has racks of all different size batteries running his inverters. He can run them for a long time. I will say that if I was going to do it again, EG now makes their own all-in-one inverters. You buy 2 of them, you get your split phase there. And I probably would have gone that route instead of mix and matching between grow watt and the batteries. But so far, I haven't had any issues. It was actually really easy to use. So how the system works is our service line coming in. Like I said, there's 2 service lines coming in, 200 amps each. One comes in and feeds this panel. The other one comes into this manual transfer switch. And then from the manual transfer switch, I can have it either go right over to the panel, and that would be a normal on-grid operation. I have this in the inverter position. So what that does, that connects the inverter to this panel instead of the grid power. So there's a line from the inverter that feeds this panel and then feeds that. There's a circuit in here that feeds this panel. And the reason for that is the circuit goes from this panel and goes right into the inverter. That is keeping the batteries charged. That is a grid connection that keeps the batteries charged. If that power goes out, then the inverter immediately kicks in. There's literally a millisecond. You'll see the lights flicker, but that's it. You can be running the microwave, and the microwave will kind of hiccup for just a second and keep running, and nothing shuts off. Where if you have a propane whole house generator, you have to wait, a minute. So if you're cooking something, it's going to reset and you'll have to restart it. But that's how it works. This first circuit, that's the only circuit that's still live in here. I have this set up so I can still switch over to generator. So if we are off grid, if we have no power, we're off grid, the inverter's running, the batteries are draining. If they start getting low, I can still hook up my gas generator and feed into the inverter to charge my batteries. So that's the setup. It was a little complicated. Before I started any work, I contacted my township to see what I needed to do. I didn't need any permits or anything, but they have a electrical inspection company that they are contracted with in the county, and that's who I had to use. So I called them first and told them what I wanted to do and kind of talked to the guy a little bit. His name was Gus. He was a great guy. He helped us out a lot. He came out, he was in the area, stopped by, didn't charge us anything. He came down and looked at what we had and what I was planning on doing. I showed him I already had the 200 amp panel, I had the inverter, I had the batteries. He looked at everything and said, you do it that way and it'll pass inspection without any trouble. So that's what we did. That gave me the confidence to go ahead and move forward and get it done. So right now, it's been in place for a while. We've done some load testing on the unit, and we haven't had any trouble. This box right here I started to talk about is the Sense Home. It basically connects into the panels and tells you how much power you're using, shows you everything you need to know. There's an app on your phone, plus there's a website you can use. And right now, I'm pulling, hopefully you can see that, 540 watts out of the system. There's 2 refrigerators that happen to turn on, so when those shut off, we'll drop down. Usually we're right around 350 to 400. And I have computers and monitors and stuff on upstairs, and there's some other stuff in the house on. But that's about average for us. So I didn't say, but the batteries are 48 volt, 100 amp hour batteries. So I have 400 amp hours at 48 volts. If you wanted to do a 12 volt system, you would need 4 times as many batteries. And with 12-volt systems, to get the power out of it, we wanted to, it doesn't work. The calculations is just too hard. So 48 volts is the way to go if you're going to be drawing a lot of power. So I'm drawing, like I said, about 540 watts right now. If we lose power, this system takes over immediately. You don't have to do anything. We actually won't even notice the power off in the house. We'll probably see the lights flicker. But the only thing upstairs that will go off that we'll know, we can look at right away to see if the power's off in the house, is the oven. The oven is not on this circuit. The oven draws a lot of power, and we decided not to have that on this panel. We have our stove top, and we have our microwave, and we have our other outlets so we can make coffee and that kind of stuff. But we don't use the oven that often, even in the wintertime, unless we're baking or something. But that's kind of rare. So I felt it more beneficial to have the stove top, the microwave, and the other items like that. The rest of this, the oven, I just thought was too big and too much power. We wouldn't use it because it would just drain the batteries too fast. We don't have solar right now, but that is definitely something we're going to do in the future, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a demonstration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kill the grid power in this panel that feeds the inverter. What that'll do, that'll simulate a power outage, and the inverter will kick on and run the house. At least run everything on that panel. And you'll hear it. You might see the lights flicker. So the lights flicker, the inverter is on, and all the power now is coming from the inverter. Notice you're not hearing anything? That's because we're barely drawing a little over 500 watts. Until you draw more power, the inverter actually doesn't kick all the fans on. It doesn't kick up onto high. This is what they call power saving mode. So we're just drawing just enough power from the batteries just to run whatever load is on the inverter. Now, if we were to jump up to a heavier load, this would jump up and make a ton of noise. Again, we're only drawing 530 watts. But that's it. So that's how fast it is, and that is everything running. The biggest loads we have on this panel, the biggest load is our hot water heater. We wanted to be able to take showers, wash dishes and stuff, so the hot water heater is the biggest load. If we're not running water, the hot water tank kicks on once an hour, and you can see this with the Sense monitor, it shows you all this, once an hour for about 5 minutes, and during that time it pulls about 4,500 watts. So that's a heavy load, to pull from the batteries, but it's only for 5 minutes once an hour, so it's really not that bad. The other big load, of course, is the pump for our water and our well. That only kicks on when we run a lot of water, and it only kicks on for about a minute until it repressurizes the system, and then it shuts back off. So that's not a problem. Cooking is probably the next biggest load, depending on how much we're cooking. Each burner on our electric stove pulls about 1,500 watts. So those are the biggest loads that we have. If I have the hot water heater running, the water pump running, I'm running the microwave and a couple of other things, the stove, the most I've seen us pull is about 9 kilowatts. Again, the inverter is rated for 12 kilowatts continuous, and then it'll spike. I think it said it will spike to 30 kilowatts for a few seconds. But I bought a little bit oversized because I didn't want to overwork it, max it out all the time. So we should be good there. By my calculations with the batteries, because nighttime we almost use no power, very little power at all, we can probably get a day and a half to 2 days of power with these batteries, 4 batteries that we have now. I would love to have longer. So if we're without power for longer than that, again, I could hook the generator up and keep the batteries, use the generator to top off the batteries and keep the house going. But I do want to add a bunch of solar panels, and I'm looking at doing that. I'll probably be buying in bulk. So from Signature Solar, they have a couple of packages where you can get 10 solar panels. Some of them are like $200, other ones are like $300, 350 watt. The inverter I bought is a upgraded inverter, which means it can take more amps and more voltage in. The maximum voltage this can take in is 250 volts, and I think it's 120 amps. So I can hook my solar panels up in serial to create higher voltages, which means to run from the solar panels to the house, I can use smaller wire, which is cheaper. And that more voltage coming into the panel is actually more efficient than if I was running lower voltage, like just a straight 48 volt coming into the solar panel. So I'll probably be running the solar panels in a combination of parallel and serial to balance it out and feed that system in. I have a open space next to the house that gets tons of sun, and it's on a hillside, and I don't do anything with that hillside other than mow it. So I can put the solar panels there. There should be plenty of room to put, 8 to 10 panels, 350 to 400 watt panels. That's what I'm looking at doing. And I don't know if I'm going to pole mount them or if I'm just going to build a rack and slope them. I don't want to put them on the roof. We have a shingled roof. And the house is 15 years old. The shingles are going to have to be replaced eventually. And with solar panels on the roof, you still have to clean them to get them, for them to be more efficient. I have a small solar panel on the roof now that feeds a bi-UNO battery in my shack through a charger, and that's how I run my ham radio shack. But you have to clean them, and I would rather be able to walk out with a squeegee and clean them right out in my yard than get up on a ladder and go up on the roof and do all that. So that's why I want to do it ground level as well. Easier to maintain, easier to work on. And if we have to have a new roof, we don't have all the hassle of removing all the panels and putting them back up. So that's the reason for that. So we've been on the inverter right now. If I pop this open and wake up one of the screens, it says it's discharging, but we're still at 100%. So until a bigger load kicks on, nothing's going to happen. I'm trying to think if I have anything around close to kick it up. Let me go get something that I can plug in and make a more draw on the system. So right now we're pulling 467 watts. Hopefully you can see that. I've plugged in this little electric heater we have. When I turn this on, it's going to crank up power and the inverter will kick up. You'll hear the fans. It'll get noisy. Let's go ahead and do that. So you hear the inverter kick on. We're pulling 1750, right around 1750. Yeah, right around 1750 watts. The heater's on. I can feel heat coming out of it. The batteries are discharging, but that's how it works. That's how fast it works. And then as soon as this load stops and we drop back down, the inverter will shut back off. It'll take a second. So we're back down to 400 watts. The inverter is still running. It takes a little bit for that to kick back down, but that's how the system works. Again, future plans, solar panels coming into the house. Now, when it's running and it's pulling a load, I do get RF noise on 80 meters. So it just cut down. When that's running on high, I do get RF on 80 meters. You have to keep in mind though, my shack and my radio is directly above the inverter. If I take my radio out into the driveway a little bit further away, I really don't notice any noise. I haven't tried moving it across the house and just running a coax out the window or something to see how much noise, but directly above it, I'm definitely getting noise. 80 meters washed out. 40 isn't bad. I hear a little bit on 40, and 20 meters is completely clear. It doesn't bother it at all. Sorry, my furnace just kicked on. That's all. Just my furnace. The inverter still isn't running. But that is what I get. So I do get some noise. I do have some good snap-on ferrites for my radio that I haven't tested yet, and that's going to be probably my next step, and I'll try to do a video of me when I do that to see if I'm able to knock any of the noise from the inverter down. What I want to do is the feed line coming out of the inverter, I want to put some big ferrite, snap-on ferrites out of there to see, because that's probably where it's transmitting the noise into the system. But that's it. Now I'm on battery. If the power comes back, it'll beep, and then it will make sure that the power is back on and stable, and then it'll kick back over to grid power, and I'll be back on grid power. So I'm going to re-energize the circuit that feeds this system. You heard it beep. It'll beep here again in a second. It's switched back over to the grid. So this is just passing through. Right now the power coming in to this panel, that circuit passing through the panel, passing through the inverter, and over to this panel to provide power to that side of the house. And that's all there is to it. It actually works really well. We haven't had any issues. I've done some heavy load testing and drained the batteries down. So right now the batteries, let's see if that battery says it's charging again. Now we're at 99%, so it's in standby mode. It's not charging or discharging. I have to drain it down more for it to kick into charging mode. But that's pretty much it. It's worked out so far. Because this is emergency backup, I don't get any RF until that kicks on. So it doesn't really affect my ham radio operation in the house. If we have a huge snowstorm or something and the power in the house goes out and the inverter's on and it's running high, I will get some noise. But like I said, normally it's not running on high because we're only pulling 400, 500 watts unless the hot water tank or something like that kicks on for a few minutes. So I don't think it'll bother me that much. If I absolutely needed to make a ham radio contact, I could come down and throw the breakers for the hot water tank off. That'd probably be the only thing that would turn on without us knowing. So I could turn that off temporarily until I made that contact or something like that. Like I said, I'm hoping that I can mitigate some of that RF, and that's going to be the next step that I'll do. But definitely check out Will Prouse, all his videos. He makes it look super easy, and it is. The battery, hooking up the batteries and getting the inverter to monitor the BMS, to do all that for the batteries, to keep the batteries balanced and everything else, super easy. It's just connecting some wires and putting some dip switches, doing a little configuration on the inverter, which is pretty simple. The hard part in doing this for a existing house would be getting all the components you need to do the wiring and actually getting the wiring done and getting that all scheduled and taken care of. If you were building a new house, I highly recommend putting in some transfer panels before your main panels. If I had this panel already in place, I would not have to have contacted the electric company. I wouldn't have had an inspector. I could have just killed the power to the house right there completely. When you throw the main breaker in your panel off, the panel's off, but the wires from your service coming into the panel are still hot, and you can still get severely electrocuted or if not killed. So by you having this manual panel in here, I could kill this panel and kill the inverter, and literally there'll be no power coming into this panel anywhere, and I could do whatever work I needed to do. The reason I did it this way instead of just taking the service entrance right into the inverter, right into a panel where I could feed the inverter, if I ever have a problem with the inverter or I have a problem with the batteries and they're not functioning, I can switch back to grid power and get power back to those parts of my house. If there was no grid power available and the inverter wasn't working and this wasn't working, I could run another circuit, and I do have a large piece of wire that I could do that, from this panel over to this panel temporarily to run my gas generator and at least get some power back to the house. So there's multiple backups in this system, and when I get solar panels, that's even going to add more backup into the system. The batteries aren't cheap. You can build your own battery systems. Will Prowse does it all the time. For this, because I was doing it this way and I wanted it to be really well done, and it's not an off-grid cabin somewhere where I'm really not that concerned. This is my home. I didn't want to have any problems, fire, overheating, shortages, that kind of thing. So I went with expensive batteries and a good inverter for a peace of mind. And my wife's very happy. She already loves the system. We haven't had any power outages, but winter's coming. Our furnace doesn't run on this system. Again, we would need a huge gas generator to be able to run our furnace, or propane generator. We usually heat the house with wood in the wintertime anyhow. We have a fireplace. With this system, we'll at least be able to run the blower to circulate the heat around the house. I was out the other day, split a bunch of wood. We have trees. We have a bit of land here, and there's trees down everywhere, so getting wood is not an issue. It's just a matter of getting the wood prepped and getting it taken care of. And I'm already pretty much stocked up for winter. I'm going to get some extra stocked up. I always like to, because you never know how much you're going to use over winter. So I do want to get extra stocked up. It's always nice to have. And if I don't use it, then that's wood for next year. I have a bunch of the wood I have down there is actually wood from last year. It's super seasoned. It'll burn so well. But that's it. That's wrap up. I'll keep you posted on anything else that comes up. Once I did all the wiring in these panels, I did label the panels for certain things. I labeled this for the inverter, for grid power. I made new sheets labeling all the breakers, so I know what was what. That just makes it easier if somebody else has to look at this if I'm not around, or if my wife has to come down and flick a breaker off for something. There's no hassle, and it's easy to do. But this was nerve-wracking to me because I don't know anybody else that has put in a system like this. Again, without Will Prowse's videos, I don't think I would have the courage to do this myself. Without support from Signature Solar and talking to their support people about what I was doing, they actually helped me feel more comfortable about it as well. But yeah, there's nobody that specializes in this. How do you find somebody that specializes in this without, if I would have gone, Generac has their Powerwall and other companies, I know Tesla sells their systems. To put one of their systems in, I probably would have paid 4 times as much money to put one of these, something in like this. So you do save a ton of money doing it yourself. It's a hassle. It's a little stressful. Leading up to the days where we were doing the electrical work, I didn't sleep very well. I kept having nightmares about electrical wiring. And the day we started this, the power company killed the power. Literally, the moment the power company killed the power, it started raining. So we were working outside on the service entrance coming into the house in the rain. I have a 10x10 pop-up. We put that up to give us some shelter and some cover. The person that came from the power company was a very nice guy. We actually, he hung around and we talked to him for a while. The inspector that I dealt with was really nice. Actually, me and him hit it off, and had a really nice conversation as well. So everybody I've dealt with to get this project done was really nice to deal with. I didn't, other than the one electrical company that came and was pushing me to put in a generator like 3 times the size I needed. Everybody else I talked to was pretty genuine and really nice. If Generac would have gotten back to me, or if that local rep would have gotten back to me, there's no doubt that I would have had a Generac system and a propane tank put in the ground right now. We tried to go that way. We tried for almost 8 months calling and making phone calls trying to get that accomplished. And it just became a frustration. And, I had watched one of Will Prowse's latest videos, and that's what made me finally pull the trigger. And I was very nervous about it. My wife actually was very supportive and said, if you really think that's going to work, let's do it. And now that it's in and so far it's working as designed, we're pretty happy. Like I said, we may notice the lights flicker, but other than that, we won't have any issues. And once we get the solar panels in, as long as we can get a day or two out of the batteries, we can have the solar panels recharging during the day. My wife actually said, "Well, why don't we just add more batteries now?" They are expensive, so we're gonna run this way for now. I don't know if I'm gonna get solar panels in before winter. I may just wait until spring to start that project. Winter will be here before we know it, and I just don't know if I'm going to get to it now. So, but that's it. I hope you like seeing this, and yeah, this is a big step into not being independent of the grid, but just having the capability of an alternate means of power if we really need it. Last year we had the ice storm. You should check out, I did a video on that here. We were without power for almost 3 days. My next door neighbor ran out of propane. So with this, as long as we have gas and we have a little bit of sun after we get solar panels, of course, we could go for so much longer. And if my neighbors don't have power or if they run out of propane, we can always help them out. They can come here and keep warm as well. Although most of the neighbors out here in the country also have fireplaces and stuff. So that's another reason I like to keep a little extra wood on hand so I can help them out if needed. So with that, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions about this whole setup. Or if you're building a system and you want to, you need more information, Will Prowse has what they call do-it-yourself solar forums. You can go out and check out there. You can ask me, comment on Will's videos. But yeah, it's working, and this is how I think things should go in the future. If you're looking for something for your house, definitely check out a battery system. This type of setup. If you have the room to put up some solar panels and stuff like that, I think you could do this and create a emergency backup for yourself, where you don't have to worry about getting propane delivered. And if you look at propane prices, they've gone up. I think propane prices are going to go up even higher with the shortages in the other parts of the world, and pipelines here in the U.S. and stuff being shut down. So it's definitely a way to get some power to maintain your normalcy. I don't want to lose the meats and stuff I have in my freezer. And I want to, if our power goes out, I want to at least maintain a semi-normal life and not have to worry about it. So that's all I got to say. Again, the system is expensive up front, but if the batteries last 20 years, the inverter lasts, it'll, be a blessing. So this is Tango Oscar Mike. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and I'll keep you updated on any changes. 73, and take care.
Tango Oscar Mike.